Hi there, students. I'm XS. That's little x, little s, which stands for extra sweet, because that's what I am. Today, I want to talk to you about the ga hitsuyo grammar point. You might also see wa hitsuyo in some cases, but there will effectively be very little difference in terms of meaning between these two constructions. This is a pretty easy grammar point, conceptually speaking, so there isn't a whole lot to digest here. I'll be providing you with some example sentences so you can see it in action, and I'll try to teach you some tips and things. Anyway, let's get a good definition before we go any further. This gives us a fairly clear understanding of hitsuyo. It means that something is needed. In English, we can be fairly flexible with the word need, right? We might create English sentences like these. I need to buy a Halloween costume. Or, I need a Halloween costume. Let's strip those down. So for English, when we create sentences with the word need, we have basically two options. Either a construction that is need plus noun, or a construction that is need to verb. In Japanese, we don't really have the option to modify hitsuyo in a way that allows us to use it for verbs. And when we think about this construction, it's kind of going to become obvious why that is. I've introduced hitsuyo in the construction ga hitsuyo, or wa hitsuyo, which really means the same thing. And we know that ga is our subject marker, right? So what can go before ga? It must be the subject of our sentence. And for Japanese, the subject of the sentence is going to need to be a noun or a noun phrase. Therefore, whatever is needed in the case of a Japanese sentence that uses ga hitsuyo must be a noun. Same with wa hitsuyo. So our English sentence, I need a Halloween costume, in Japanese is going to be Halloween no kaso ga hitsuyo. Note very quickly how the sentence gets rearranged in Japanese. The thing that's needed becomes the subject of the sentence, right? And that's because the topic of the sentence, the thing that would be preceding our wa particle, is watashi. I am the one that needs a Halloween costume. In Japanese, we really frequently just drop the I in I need statements because unless otherwise specified, of course, it's going to be me who is doing the needing. We could put any kind of noun in the noun slot before ga and create any sentence that means I need any given noun. For example, Halloween no okashi ga hitsuyo, or kawaii eiga ga hitsuyo. So that's a fairly handy construction, right? But it's not as flexible as need in English. With English, we can change need to need to, and then we use need to with verbs, and unfortunately, we can't do that in Japanese, right? Well, yes. However, in Japanese, we have a different tool that we can use to create sentences that are quite like need to verb type sentences in English. We can add the small noun koto to the end of our base verbs, which will actually convert the verb into a noun. And by doing this, we can kind of massage the verb to become the subject of a sentence, allowing them to take the ga hitsuyo construction. Let's take a look. 料理をすることが必要. We're using here our irregular verb suru to take the noun koto. We want suru in the base form, and that plus koto is going to create a noun. Together with ryori o, we get the entire noun phrase that means something like the doing of the cooking, or the act of cooking, right? And now that's a noun phrase. So, therefore, we're able to use it as the subject of our sentence, meaning I need to cook. 料理をすることが必要. Let's try another, just so that you see this with a different type of verb. ハロウィンの傘を買うことが必要. This one is a godan verb. Kao ends in u, but not eru or iru, so it must be godan. And we can see now that we're making kao into a noun by adding koto to the base form of the verb. Now we've made a relatively massive subject for our sentence. Haruin no kasu o kao koto. And that entire noun, as our subject, is what is being needed. One more example. 何かを考えることが必要. 考える is an ichidan verb. Remember, we can guess that it's an ichidan verb because it ends in eru. So, we add koto to the end of the base form of the verb. The base form will always be the form that ends in an u sound. And we form a noun meaning something like the act of thinking about something. And then we can add ga hitsuyo, and we've created a sentence meaning I need to do the thinking about something. Do you notice what I'm doing with my translations here? Technically, the best English translation for 何かを考えることが必要 should really be something like I need to perform the act of thinking about something. That's because in Japanese, 考えること really is a noun. And so it's not a perfect translation for an English sentence like I need to think, which is really a verb being modified by need to. Actually, there's another grammar pattern that does that even better in Japanese, because Japanese has a whole other construction, nakereba naranai, which also means to need something and can attach directly to verbs. How about we learn that construction next week? Oh, but one more thing I want to say about Hitsuyou before we end today's grammar drop. So far, I've been teaching you Hitsuyou in the construction ga Hitsuyou or wa Hitsuyou. But technically, Hitsuyou itself is an adjective, so it can actually be used to describe a noun directly. Hitsuyou is a na adjective, so the use will be relatively simple too. Here's a quick example sentence. 必要なハロウィンの仮装はどこですか? So, once we add na to Hitsuyou, we're just going to stick it in front of any other noun to create a noun phrase meaning the whatever that was needed, or the required something or another. You can do this with any noun, of course. Just stick hitsuyou na in front of it and you've made a new needed or required noun. That's all from me. See you next week. また来週!